Alrighty, we finally got the good news. 11.2 is coming out on August 5th, but let's be real, 11.2 is coming out on August 12th. That's when the game actually kind of starts. But I mean, that week I'll still be... I don't really know if I'm going to be doing, like, Mythic Zeros, because all of that gear gets replaced instantly. Doesn't really matter. I mean, I might do it for something to do. But my main goal is going to be getting all of my characters through the story, getting all that set up. Everyone gets their artifact cloak. Everyone's just getting kind of set up and ready to go. And that's the plan, at least. So with that being the case, one of the things I really enjoyed doing, especially on a season start, is going through and talking about all the trinkets that we have available to us, and what might be good and what might be bad, and it's just fun to kind of speculate. So first we're going to go through the dungeon, then we're going to go through the raids, and then we'll go through the... Actually, you know what, first let's talk about the Delve trinkets, then we'll go dungeons, then raids. So, the Delve trinkets are kind of weird. They're obviously capped at 710 at 6 of 6 hero track, but they have been, especially in the past, deceptively very, very strong. The Mechanical Amplifier especially being one of those, and even for other classes that are Mastery enjoyers, the Suspicious Energy Drink will also remain a very strong option. But with the new Delve items that we have, let's take a look. This is mainly for tanking, so it's not for us. Harmful spells and abilities, dealing damage, it's kind of weak. Blocking or parrying, not for us. But we have the Mind Fracturing Odium. Currently, this thing, as far as what they've been simming have been telling us, is it's got about a 30% uptime, and it's got 20,000 haste. 20,000 haste. To put that into perspective, I have 15,000 haste in my full mythic gear plus rings. My rings and necklaces aren't like super tuned to haste, but like that's got more haste than my whole gear set. It's crazy how much haste this gives. I expect it to be nerfed, especially with the 30% uptime. I have it equipped on my character currently. But as far as like just raw stats and numbers goes, that is crazy. There are some other things taking damage. Once again, a tank one. Dealing damage, granting you some of your lowest secondary stat. Most of the time, the thing that's very weird about this is, well, if the target's an ethereal, your highest secondary stat might have some niche applications, but like most of the time it's not really going to give you what you want. This is just a damage trinket, but you also have to play a little mini game with a foot bomb to do it, so not really seen or probably going to be dealt with much. Mastery trinket deals damage, probably not going to be great for us because it says heal. Because any effect that we have that has damage and healing, or damage and something, or like damage and a slow, multiple effects generally are cooler. However, a lot of the time they're actually less valuable and weaker in terms of pure performance, mainly because some of the stat budget or the damage budget or whatever is allocated towards that other stat, in this case healing, so it's probably just not going to be that good for us, just look based on the fact that it has multiple stats that it gives. Spells tend to fracture, dealing damage. If they die, you get some verse. I mean, it's just it's just a little bit of on damage, probably won't be too great. The main reason why I'm not looking too heavily at these, and then why I'm looking mainly heavily at this Delve trinket alone, is we have to realize what our dungeon pool is, which I'll talk to, which, you know what, let's just go into now, because there's no other reason to look at the rest of these. So looking at our dungeon pool for this season, we are going to have some fan favorites back. But most importantly, Arakara. This trinket from Arakara City of Echoes has generally been crazy strong. Not only does it give you... But that's the weird thing about it as well. You notice how I mentioned before that things that give you multiple stats or damage and healing or something like that are generally pretty weak. However, the Arakara Sackbreed has been far and above one of the best trinkets performance-wise that the game has ever introduced, and it's purely passive, which is going to be a massive boon to a lot of people. So this Sackbreed is probably going to take our passive slot, and even if And even in some situations, I'm pretty sure the sim is telling us that we could be running the Sack Brood and this Mind Fracturing Odium, if it doesn't get nerfed, as our BIS trinkets. So unfortunately, once again, we are looking at Delve trinkets being good enough to try and get and farm and potentially BIS. The other problem with Delve trinkets is I don't know exactly how, if all of the trinkets will be specific to the season, like if the Mechanical Amplifier will be available or not. I'm not entirely sure exactly how they decide to do Delve loot pools. But if all of those trinkets are available to get, that just dilutes the pool even more. That just means you have to do more chances, more tries, more attempts, filling up your vault every single week to maybe get a hero track trinket that's BIS from Delves, which I'm honestly not a fan of. I'm fine with Delve trinkets being decent. Like, I think they should be, like, decent, but in terms of actual, like, best in slot value, I don't think they should be within... They shouldn't even be within 3% of the next best option at eye level. I just really don't like the idea of doing the Delve casual content and even trying to run that roulette of gear and trying to get it through your vault. Like, imagine if you have a myth track weapon, but then you have your best in slot hero track trinket. It just feels bad to take. It just, I don't like it at all. So I really do hope that maybe they look at some of these things and they nerf the Delve trinkets, so our best will be from dungeons and raids, and we can get them in a more guaranteed fashion.
We shall meet again.
We have Arkar City of Echoes with the Sack Brood trinket. This is a tank trinket, so we're not even going to think about it. Dawnbreaker does... we never really use this trinket at all, because once again, you get secondary stat and damage. And it's damage split between enemies. So, because of this, once again, trinkets that generally have multiple functions are weaker than what you'd expect, with Arkar Sack Brood being kind of the only exception I can remember in recent times. So Dawnbreaker, we're not really going to get anything special here. Priory of the Sacred Flame. Tanks might be interested in the Tome of Light's Devotion, because it did pretty well for them last season. But the Signet of the Priory isn't something we're really going to look at. It's a 2-minute trinket. We're a 1.5-minute class. It just doesn't line up. And one thing I've always found very weird about the Signet of the Priory is the Signet of the Priory, it gives you, let's say at that eye level, 8,000 stats of your highest secondary stat for 20 seconds, whereas something like House of Cards gives you up to 10,000 mastery for 15 seconds at a way shorter cooldown, which has always felt really weird to me, where the actual value parity between these trinkets has been really low. I mean, I guess they wanted this to be a good trinket, so they obviously made it better. But the stat budgeting on raid trinkets is kind of crazy. And then we have Operation Floodgate back again. Rip Bubbles, you will not be missed. Rip Bozo. The improvised C4M Pacemaker has been seen as a very, very nice passive trinket, very valuable. It's very consistent. It can be somewhat inconsistent in Mythic Plus, weirdly enough, where if it activates at the end of a pack, when you go into the next pack, which is generally a larger pull, you just won't have the active because it'll be deactivated for a certain amount of time. So it has its ups and downs, but is generally a pretty good trinket. So we have, honestly, a lot of very, very good passive trinkets to look at. We have the Delve trinket, we have Arkar Sack Brood, and the improvised C4M Pacemaker. So we're already eating good, and we're only halfway through. This trinket, I don't really know how good it is. Your melee attacks have a chance to coalesce a Warp Stalker Echo to strike to you, inflicting damage split between enemies in its path. Generally, trinkets that do split damage don't scale very well in upper end content. If the proc rate is good enough, it might be like decent, but realistically, oh my god, that ring is so juicy. But realistically, this trinket is probably going to be okay, but most likely mid, based on how Yo, what is? Yo, look at that weapon! Bro, the visuals of this patch are going to be so good. Oh my god. Dude, that looks so good. I haven't even looked at all these weapon models yet. Yo, okay. Now, Halls of Atonement is interesting. Halls of Atonement is a returning dungeon from Shadowlands, and they've actually added a new trinket to this dungeon. The necklace is very good for us, but this trinket, especially for arms, is going to be interesting and very, very good for Mythic Plus. Channel for 1 second to invoke the Wrath of the Idol, increasing your critical strike by 13,000 for 15 seconds. The force slams the earth, dealing nature damage to all nearby enemies, increasing critical strike by 832 per enemy hit up to a maximum of 16,000. Now, I don't know exactly how this trinket works because I don't have it to test with. I don't know if the increasing critical strike by 832 up to 16k, if that is for the total, or if you can have 16k on top of the 13k. I'm assuming it's going to be just the 16k total. But even then, one of the Colossus is already performing very, very well in the current environment, and will be performing very well in Mythic Plus in the next season. And the main thing that this is going to do is the Colossus tier set actually. The Colossus tier set makes Demolish do an additional percentage of crit damage on top of what you're already doing. So what that means is that the Colossus hero talent, you know, let's just swap over and show it because that just makes more sense to me. So the tier set is Demolish increase the critical strike and extra mortal strikes. Demolish damage increase and critical strike damage of your abilities increased by up to 20% on targets affected by your Demolish for 10 seconds. So now you have a 20, during the Demolish window, you have a 20% crit amp on top of a 10% crit amp from Martial Expert, on top of another 10% from Impale, and if you're running the gem, I think, do I have the gem? Yep. And if you're running the gem, you also get another 0.15 critical crit damage increase per different gem color. So Colossus is going to have 4 different crit damage amplifications, making a trinket like this that has... Making a trinket like this that gives you so much critical strike, probably very, very strong. Also, it's on a minute 30 cooldown right alongside Avatar. So what's probably going to happen is we're going to activate this with our Avatar Roar, whatever. Warbreaker. So we're going to stack our Demolish up. Avatar Roar, Warbreaker, Demolish to get that big crit amplification, then Ravager, and then try and get as many cleaves in as possible with this massive crit damage amp on top of hoping to get resets and probably do a crazy amount of damage. That's not even considering the possibility of collateral damage doing even more if we're actually able to set up on a really big pull. So there's a lot of potential to show skill expression with Colossus and the tier set and a trinket like this. So I'm actually really interested in this trinket going forward. I think it might be really, really good, especially for Mythic Plus. Unfortunately, Fury hasn't really seen any updates, and honestly, ARMS hasn't really seen any updates either, making what we're probably going to be playing, what we're going to be doing, how we're going to be playing pretty similar, if not static, to what we were already doing. The only thing the Fury tier set really does is it makes us press Raging Blow more. And that's kind of it. Like, there's nothing special, nothing interesting. You just, Raging Blow is just by far the better button. So that's just kind of where we're sitting there, but I'll do another video on tier sets more specifically later. And now we have Tazavesh. I did not actually play Tazavesh. This will be a brand new dungeon for me. I think I don't know. I think Tazavesh is split into 2. I'm not entirely sure exactly how they're doing this dungeon. In terms of, like, is it just a mega dungeon outside the Mythic Plus format, or is it actually, you have, I think you have upper and lower Tazavesh or whatever as your Mythic Plus, where it's split into half, so 4 bosses and 4 bosses, I think. So, we'll see how it goes. It'll be fun, but as far as trinkets are concerned, let's see what we have here. So this is a tanking trinket, taking damage, whatever. Secret technique: select a player in your party raid, granting them secondary stat and granting you I mean, this is just a pure stat stick, but the stats that you're getting are actually pretty low, so it might be good early, but I don't really see anyone using it. Now, melee attacks and abilities have a high chance to attach a volatile satchel in your target upon reaching 3 stacks or when removed. The satchel detonates and deals 2.1 million fire damage. Might be okay, might be an okay early trinket. I do wonder if that fire damage would be AoE, which it probably won't be. I do wonder if the satchels can be applied through our AoE spells and abilities, so might have some value, but with how good all of our passive trinkets are and with how good secondary stats really start scaling, especially at higher target counts, it's probably going to be okay, but not something we're really going to be looking for unless it's overtuned. Now. Oh. First and foremost, just look at this thing, man. Oh god, this thing is so cool. But now let's look at the raid trinkets. Well, this weapon's very rare too. Fun. First off, we have a cheat death tank trinket, but it's not the same kind of cheat death we're used to. This tank trinket requires you to be above 75% health by the end of a 6-second effect. So unless you're playing with a healer or you're planning something, or maybe a blood DK, can really get a big hit in and then kind of heal from it. This thing's going to be kind of weird to use. I don't know how effective it's going to be. A lot of the cheat death trinkets of the past, you kind of just they kind of just activated, and you didn't have any of these real conditionals that are affected by it. But this might be good for tanks. I don't really know. We have a lot of good passive trinkets coming into this season, so I'm not really sure what tanks are going to want to use. So might have some value, maybe might have some progression value, but realistically, who knows? It's kind of up in the air how valuable this thing might be. But it is primarily built as a tank trinket, so it's not really going to be something we're going to be using as DPS. Maybe there's a mechanic we could potentially cheese with it, but it's not going to be something on my list, really. Araz Ritual Forge. Recklessly feed a portion of your essence to the forge, granting you strength decaying over 30 seconds at the cost of 15% of your max health. So that's a lot of strength. That's a lot. That's 42,000 strength. That's a almost 50% bonus in strength. Now, this thing is going to be crazy for Frost DK because it's got crit. It gives you a strength amp on a 2-minute cooldown with breath. And with Pillar of Frost increasing your strength by an additional 30%, as well as things like Merciless Bone Grinder and other things you can stack up. This is going to be a crazy Frost DK trinket. Like, absolutely insane. If Frost DK is good, they're going to be using this thing. This is disgusting. But for us, it is a 2-minute trinket, right? 2-minute trinkets generally just aren't that good for us. They're not really what we need. They're not really what we want. It has a lot of strength in it, but I don't really know how fast it decays. And I don't really see us sitting in a world where, unless there's a very specific timing that we're holding our CDs for, that we would use this trinket on like a 2-minute interval in like a damage amp boss phase. Outside of something like that, I don't really see us using this Ritual Forge at all. It has potential, but I just don't think it's going to be that good. The Astral Antenna. The antenna has a chance to detect and draw ambient arcane energy towards you, granting you crit strike. Multiple applications may overlap. This could be, depending on the proc rate and how often you get it, might be decent for something like Colossus Arms, just because of all the crit modifiers we talked about. However, the problem, once again, is this is a passive trinket. And these passive trinkets are fighting against things like Pacemaker, against Arakara Sackbrood, against this 20,000 haste, 30% uptime trinket. Like, this thing would have to be crazy, effective, and really high proc rate to maybe even be considered with what we're currently looking at. Brand of the Ceaseless Ire. This is a tank trinket, damage increased, absorb. Yeah, this has an absorb. It deals damage, increases per target. So this is really going to be a tanking trinket because it's taking damage. It's a passive trinket that is only affected by taking damage. So could be good for tanks. I don't know. I'm not a tanker man. However, it won't be good for us. Eradicating Arcanostone. Arcano Core. High chance to charge the Arcana Core at 10 charges to play a Sentinel. Between nearby enemies. Recover 2 charges if only one enemy is struck. I mean, it's just a passive trinket that does damage, but like I said, like, unless this thing's overtuned, we're not going to be using it, which I don't think we are. Compare the Oathbound Shadow Guard to annihilate your target nearby enemies, dealing 7.5 million cosmic damage split between them. Damage is increased by per additional enemy. It's a 2-minute cooldown. It does damage, but it has no primary stat, and it just deals flat damage. So once again, has to be overtuned to be used. Probably not something we're going to be using at all. Trinkets that have a long cooldown but do a lot of damage as an active have seen potential in some Mythic Plus seasons, like the Grief Torch or the trinket off of Sarkareth that did the big cosmic damage hit that people used for really short windows, like in Brackenhide. But I don't think there's anything like that in the season coming up, so this probably won't really see that much play. Screams of the Forgotten Sky. These names are so good. Your harmful spells and abilities have a chance to strike your enemy with an abyssal comet, dealing cosmic damage and amplifying their gravity to increase the damage of future comets. Upon death, enemies implode to deal cosmic damage per gravity stack split between enemies. So it's a decent trinket, does damage, has an AoE component. One thing that is important is that the damage amplification that comes from this trinket on hitting enemies is a debuff on the enemy and not a buff on you. So this is not something that you can scale up into longer pulls. This is something that is going to be damaging and applying damage to enemies. It does seem like it might do a lot of damage, but once again, it is a full passive trinket, and it is fighting against Pacemaker, it is fighting against Sackbrood, and secondary stats scale very, very well comparatively to flat damage. So the trinket looks sick, looks cool, might have potential, probably won't be something we're using. Soul Render's Embrace. So this is kind of like, this is like an anybody trinket kind of thing. Reminds me of Ward of the Faceless Ire from, what was that encounter? The Aberrus encounter right before Sarkareth. Was it Deathwing? Was that encounter Deathwing? One sec. Echo of Neltharion, yeah. This ward trinket where you basically put a shield on an ally. Oops, went to the wrong thing.
Walk with the earth, mother.
It might be okay for like off specs, but it doesn't have intellect on it, so it's probably not something that's supposed to be used by healers for their tank. It also damage all nearby enemies, reduce damage taken by 20 seconds. So it's kind of a tank trinket, but any trinkets most of the time that have effects like these that are kind of cool generally aren't used that much. The only one that I've seen people did use a little bit from the War Within was the bomb suit. From the Liberation of Undermine, like, it provided a ton of defensive value because I mean, even look at this. At 671, reduced damage by 75%, or until 10 million damage was taken, but because this one has a damage effect on it, it only reduces half of that with half of the damage reduction. The bomb suit certainly had more potential, but this does have a 1-minute cooldown, so there might be some applications for it, but realistically, probably not going to be using it I don't really see many people really using it. Now, here we have something interesting, something with potential. Your harmful spells and abilities draw Focus Void through the prism to deal X amount of cosmic damage split between your target and nearby enemies. Damage increased by 30% per enemy. This effect may occur every 10 seconds and accumulate latent power within the prism, up to 15 times. consume all latent power to gain X amount of strength per stack for 20 seconds. That's the full duration of our avatar. So we're getting a strength amp for the full duration of our damage amp, right? Also, has a 20-second cooldown. Much like other trinkets that act like this, namely what was the one in Spy Master's Web? Was another one of those trinkets where you could build a ton of stacks. You can't build as many stacks, so they probably learned that they can't build it too high. But on a 20-second cooldown, this effect may occur every 10 seconds at best to build 15 stacks. That's 150 seconds, so just over 2 minutes and just under 3 minutes. So any 2-minute class could also get a lot of value out of this. Maybe even Frosty K. We did talk about this other trinket potentially for Frosty K, but maybe this one, because the amount of strength you gain is static. I don't know if the sheer volume of strength that you're going to be getting from this crit trinket might be better, but this could just outpace it altogether. So for us, it is just something we would use with every single avatar. It would be a really good active trinket. It might be something decent as an active trinket for AoE for Fury. It does not have any strength by itself, which is somewhat problematic. But it does deal some damage, deals additional damage in AoE. So it has potential, but one of the things that has kind of been happening is these passive effect trinkets like Arakara Sackbreed have kind of just been taking over with how consistently strong they are. I do think this has potential for AoE situations, for Fury. I don't think it has that much potential for Arms comparatively, because Arms is going to have the availability of maybe this trinket, but realistically, if you're playing Arms, you might use this for like Slayer, but if you're playing in dungeons, you're probably going to be using... sorry, wrong dungeon. No, not the war within current season. You're probably going to be using, as Arms Colossus especially, this Cursed Idol trinket, which is probably going to be really, really good. So, compared to last season, where I feel like we didn't have that much great trinket choice, this season, the amount of trinkets we actually have available to us is quite strong, honestly. Like, we have a lot of options, a lot of active options, a lot of passive options. This is a Strength Agi trinket from Raid. Who can use this one? This is the one I'm mainly interested in. Can it be used by, let's say Balance Druid. Can it be used by Balance Druid? No, so it can't be used by Intellect. Can it be used by Rogues? Yes, so I think this is a Strength Agi trinket, not a... well, this is pure Agi trinket. Interesting. So, we have a lot of options, man. There's a lot of options. A lot of them are pretty good. Obviously, everyone's going to sim. They're going to chase Biss. But the fact that we have so many options to use and play around, I think is going to be pretty nice, actually. There will obviously be the better options or the best options you could have. I'm going to assume most people are going to be using Arakara Sackbrood and then some version of an active trinket. Colossus Arms, probably the Halls of Atonement dungeon trinket. Fury is kind of weird, so I don't really know if we would use this trinket specifically, because one things these trinkets that stack up are really, really good for are classes that are built specifically for burst damage, because you have that large amount of primary stat injection in that burst window. But Fury is, especially now, and since we're running AM, a more consistent damage profile, to where this might have potential in like AoE, but it's probably not going to be that crazy for us compared to other classes. So most likely, even if we want this and it has some uses, it'll probably go to other classes first. If I had to guess, that are built more around a burst damage profile comparatively to Fury's. We do have some burst, but they've really toned our profile into more of a static compared to a big burst setup. But that is the trinkets we have. That is what we are looking for. Yo, that's kind of crazy. Huh. Cosmic Hearthstone. But that's what we have. Those are the trinkets we're looking forward to. And I think we honestly have a great selection. There's a lot of good things here. Bro, look at the mastery on that ring. Yow! And we'll just have to see. We'll have to see. And the Sims will tell us. We listen to the robot. The robot will tell us what to do. But I am looking forward to it, man. I think we're going to get some really, really good shit here. I think the aesthetics are great. I think a lot of the trinkets are really cool. Skarzar did a great job naming all this stuff. I'm really looking forward to next season. I think it's going to be a blast. We're doing mythic testing this week, I think, so I'm going to really get a feel for if I'm going to enjoy the raid. Man, I'm just looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. It's like a month away. And I hope you enjoyed as much as I do. And let me know what you think some of these trinkets might be good for, or might be good for you, maybe good for a different class. I don't know. But I'll see you when I see you. In the next video, we'll probably be talking about our tier sets. And that video will unfortunately not be nearly as positive as this one. Okay, bye-bye.